It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Justn Ist. Hi, Justin. How are you?
Great. How are you doing?
Oh, doing fine. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. You've got a book out called Uncorrected, A Good Man's Struggle Against Political Correctness Run Amok. How long has your book been out?
It's only been out a couple months, but it's getting a lot of attention, as you might imagine. It's poking a little bit of fun about our overly politically correct world we're living in today.
Well, I'm glad people are poking fun at it. Unfortunately, the people that are promoting it have zero sense of humor when it comes to their righteousness and sanctimonious attitudes about their political correctness. And it just seems to be getting worse and worse. I don't know. I'm probably a lot older than you, and remember, when you were allowed to make jokes that poked fun at people's cultures and backgrounds, but it was all done in the spirit of good humor, and nobody was being offended. Everybody laughed. And now I feel bad for stand-up comedians. I really do, because they're having a terrible time with this. I mean,
a lot of comedians.
Yeah,
a lot of comedians have said they won't even go on college campuses anymore because it's just too crazy.
Well, I do a lot of interviews with stand-up comics, and one of the guys that I interviewed, his name's Jeff Allen. He said that Jerry Seinfeld said that he won't go on college campuses. Now, Jerry Seinfeld is about as middle of the road, harmless kind of humor, right? I don't think Jerry Seinfeld goes into any touchy areas, sensitive political, cultural issues, right? And he won't go.
Right. And Jerry Seinfeld is considered controversial. Then you're drawing your line a little too far.
I think so.
Yeah, lots of comedians like, Bill Burr and Bill Maher and others have, started to get in trouble for really the most benign type of comments. And, that's where it's gone today, that line. And, of course, everyone wants to be respectful to others and, not offend others, but it really seems that there is more of a political motive behind the sort of the fake offense that some people take. If you really took the number of people who actually are truly offended by many of the comments out there, I'm sure it's just a very small handful of people.
Oh, I would agree with you. And you brought up a good point that there is an ulterior motive to all of this that, we can speculate is certainly politically motivated. Why do you think it's happening now?
I think my theory on this is we were really entering a period, particularly after we, as a country, proudly elected our first black president. And that really was, and even before that, it just seemed you go around the country, there's a much bigger percentage of interracial marriage. I myself am a doughy white guy married to a Mexican lady, and even places like South Carolina, the South, has a faster rate of interracial marriage than even California. So as a percentage of the population. So there are, you see these changes, and I think what really started to bring it on was the people who have this political agenda. Their voices got louder and louder and more extreme as they saw sort of the end of the road. So they started screaming it from the rooftops and taking these ideas to the absolute extreme, because there was a threat. There was a threat of no more. How can they argue? How can they make their argument anymore? So they had to redefine it, and I think that's where what I call the woke mentality came from.
You think it was the spark was ignited by electing Obama?
I think the way that it came forth was because the country was becoming so post-racial that the country was really largely getting past racism, and you would go down the street and you would really see, especially you look at the youth, and kids of all stripes are playing together, and they don't care. They don't care about the color of one's skin and other type of racial ethnic background. It's just not as important. So I think it was really that the country was becoming more post-racial. When I mentioned President Obama, that was just a big sign, a big symbol out there of, hey, this is how far the country has become. Certainly not trying to blame it on President Obama, not his fault at all. It's just a sign of where the country and how far the country had gone.
The idea that the country had become better, more racially diverse, more racially harmonious. The people that have the political agenda, they don't really want that, because division is easier to control in a country, right? Conquer and divide and conquer. Would you suggest that that's exactly what they're doing? Because it's almost like things are getting better, so they want to make them worse by pointing out the other side of the argument, which makes no sense. You used the term fake outrage, and I think that that's very valid. I don't believe that they actually believe what they're spouting. I think it's just a way to create animosity amongst the people.
Yeah, I think that's certainly right. And if you look at some of the founders of groups like BLM, now I have a lot of my family happens to be black. My cousins who are black, I have nieces and nephews who are black. I don't support the organization Black Lives Matter, because it's really more of to me, as a political group. You look at the founders of that, and some of them openly stated that they were Marxists and they were pushing a certain type of agenda.
Right.
And if you really read between the lines, if you try to make sense of all this, I don't know what other conclusion that we could really come to, because like you said, it just doesn't make sense that if you look at any statistic in our country, interracial marriage, number of attacks on minority groups, how well people are doing according to race, there is really less of an argument than ever before for it. But like you said, I believe that there is an agenda to tear things down. You can't rebuild your society, your utopian society, without tearing it down first. And, that's why I believe you see a lot of the focus on trying to tear down the history,
right,
tearing down statues. Did you know that even statues of Martin Luther King were desecrated in the riots over the summer?
Well, I believe it. I suppose, unfortunately for them, we don't have statues of Lenin and Marx in our city squares. I'd be curious to see if those would have been torn down.
Right, exactly. And if you have read anything about Marx, he was very clearly a racist person. A lot of his, comments and writings were, he absolutely should have been torn up, but like you said, I honestly don't think they would have done it. There's such a reverence for the ideology.
Well, here's the thing that always was sort of perplexing to me, is that the two terms, socialism and diversity, are diametrically opposed concepts. They do not intermix. And yet, the radical left is using those terms almost interchangeably. In order for socialism to actually work, which it hasn't, but in order to even give it a shot at working, you must all be the same, at least in terms of political ideology. I mean, that whole term political correctness came from Chairman Mao, about everybody has to be politically correct in their thinking, meaning everybody needs to think the same way. And anybody who didn't was sent away to, electroshock re-education. Now, the idea of diversity is that we all have diversity not only of skin color and of sexual orientation, but of thought. That's what always has made this country great, is that we were allowed to disagree. We have the right to disagree. And then we come to some sort of an agreement in the middle. I mean, that's why our government is set up that way, although it's not working as well as it could be, but be that as it may. So to take this concept of diversity, they're only using that on the surface, on the skin level, okay, which in my assessment of that is 100% racist, because they're not going any deeper than that. All they're saying is, we want diversity in the workplace, so that means that, okay, for every 5 white people we hire, we have to hire 2 black people, 1 Hispanic, 1 Asian, 1 gay. All they're looking for is numbers and quotas. That's not diversity. That's a photo op of diversity.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Love coffee, huh? But wait a minute. It seems like every time you finish a cup of coffee, you get all of these side effects along with it. Heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, acid reflux. As the world's first and only organic acid-free coffee, Tyler's Coffee is able to provide a healthier option in the solution for more than 100 million individuals who have sensitive stomachs or suffer from acid-related modalities. This is Tyler's acid-free coffee. Coffee without the consequences.
Are you an independent musician? How would you like to have your songs played on hundreds of radio stations just like the one you're listening to right now? Join MusicSubmit.com and we'll promote your music to radio stations and blogs in your genre. It's free to set up your account, and we guarantee your music will be considered for airplay by radio stations worldwide. Why not sign up today? It's free. MusicSubmit.com. Radio promotion for indie musicians.
Hey, this is Ray Powers. Don't touch anything. You've got it right where you need it. Tuned in to the Douglas Coleman Show. You heard me.
And like you said, there really isn't the diversity of thought. You have to fall down this line. The quickest thing that political correctness does is it shuts down the discussion. It shuts down the argument.
Sure it does.
So they really expect that sense of fall in line or else. And we've seen, this sounds like, fiction, like fiction out of the book, but it really is happening today. We've seen people get fired for very benign comments. If you look at, there was the broadcaster for the Sacramento Kings named Grant Napier, and he was essentially forced out because all he said was, "All lives matter." That's what he said. And he was fired for that. At the same time, you have Nick Cannon saying horrible, horrible things about people with less melatonin. He said some very anti-Semitic things over time, and he still has a job. So, it seems like there's no consistency in there. It's trying to, control the situation. It's trying to control the language, trying to control the thoughts. And I'll just say one more thing on it. Speaking of the diversity of thought, it used to be the left, particularly the classical liberals, who were the true defenders of free speech. Whether it was painting of the cross in urine or something like that, or other offensive speech. And today you have the far left really pushing this division, and I really think it is enlightening to see people like Bill Maher and others who are classical liberals who are speaking out against it. But I think it's really the left is in particular needs to be the one to lead the charge.
Say that again. You think who needs to lead the charge? The classical liberals.
I think it's I would say the classical liberal.
Oh, okay. All right.
It would be great if the classical liberal, not the far left, but people who traditionally would call themselves liberals, to lead the charge.
Yeah, I like to call them the JFK liberals because they were probably John F. Kennedy was probably the last real classic liberal president that we had.
Right.
But I agree with you. The thing is, with a lot of those people, they're getting so frustrated with the whole system that they're converting. I've known several who have now voted GOP and their family had voted Democrat since Roosevelt, and they said they've had it with the Democrat Party. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to be able to take the party back. Certainly, Joe's not going to take it back. Joe is 1 foot in the grave, and the other foot is on a string that somebody's manipulating. So, I mean, who knows? And all the people that are surrounding him are of that woke, far left agenda that isn't going to do anything. So I don't know where we're going with this.
Yeah, it's really scary. But it is, I mean, there are some bright spots out there.
Yeah, give me one.
Well,
give me one.
It sure doesn't seem like it sometimes, right? There was a website created by liberals. It's called counterweightsupport.com. And I may not agree with the politics of the people, but they say it's a site by liberals to fight against this type of extremism. There are also groups, I think it's speechfirst.org, which is they fight for freedom on college campuses, for the First Amendment. And that's the scary part, is how much the actual First Amendment, how our speech is already under such attack. Thousands of people have lost their jobs for what they say on their personal time on social media. Saying silly little things on social media. It's really unbelievable how far things have gone.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Justin, we do have to wrap this up. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. Give us a quick, 1 minute synopsis of your book.
Basically, it's about a young filmmaker who does a satire on society in pre-Nazi Germany, on how that society accepted this evil, awful ideology. But since he does it in a comical way, he makes light of the situation. Of course, today you must never be anything but serious about these type of themes. So he is considered a hater by the woke crowd. So essentially, he's this guy who is trying to do an anti-racist film, but the woke crowd won't let him do it because political correctness keeps getting in the way.
So the hypocrisy just never ceases to blind, yeah?
Exactly. And, the character, at first he starts to accept some things. They say, well, it's just not done that you have an all-white cast in your film. And he says, well, it's being made in 1920s Germany. What am I supposed to do? So then he keeps making concessions and so on. But finally he gets to the point where he says, enough is enough. I'm going to go over the top. So when they ask for something like that, pretty soon he has Asian Nazis walking down the halls of the...
There you go.
Yeah. And, finally at the culmination, he has a Puerto Rican transgender person playing Adolf Hitler. So he keeps going over the top. But the joke is on him, because the woke crowd, they love it. They say, oh, it's so avant-garde. It's so bold and daring. So he can't win. But there's, we talked a lot of serious topics, but it is meant to be a fun, lighthearted poke on our political correctness. And I think people of all political backgrounds, I think, would have a bit of fun with it.
Well, it sounds like a hoot. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
Yeah, it's justnist.com. So it's just like Justnist. So JUSTNIST.com. And it has a link of where you could find the book. You could find it on Amazon and Kindle. And there's some other nice links on the website.
Great. Well, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your book and having a chat with me. I really enjoyed it. And best of luck with everything.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.